You are listening to Rip's Music Podcast, where we make your music your business. Drummer, educator, and music coach Rip Phelan asks real working musicians to share the keys of their successes.
Welcome to Rip's Music Podcast. This is our first ever podcast, and today I've invited my friend Peter Champagne. He's a local freelance bass player and has done lots of shows in the studio and live work, even teaching students. And welcome, Peter.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I guess first thing we need to know is a little bit about you. Tell me how long you've been playing bass and how you got started, how you got to where you are today.
Okay. Let's see. I started playing bass right around age 12. So what is that? I'm 32. So 12 years. Wait. Well,
20 years?
20 years?
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, 20 years. And got started after playing, I've been playing piano for a while. And, just got at that age where bands were forming and bass players were rare. Nobody even knew what it was, really. It was a guitar with 4 strings. So it was... convinced my mom to buy one and bought one and played, started playing with the band across the street, and then just took it more seriously. And obviously we had our afternoons after school, and my mom dropping me off over there and hanging out for hours and playing. So all of that was pretty formative,
right? Well, what I guess going from the bedroom type of playing, hanging out at my house or at other people's houses and hanging out in the living room and just playing through songs that we liked, trying to learn like living color tunes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What transitioned you from just being a kid learning how to play music to someone actually getting, what was it like to get your first couple of gigs where people were paying you?
Right. I don't remember really how that worked. It seemed like a fairly seamless transition. It wasn't like I'm going to go get gigs or anything. Mm-hmm. I guess one thing that probably helped was I had a teacher that was a professional musician.
Okay. And
I think there were a couple of times where he couldn't make a gig, or he felt like I could cover maybe the first hour of a show. So I would basically sub in for my teacher for an hour, at a show, and he'd shoot me like $75, and that would kind of get my feet wet a little bit, and then it would obviously get me meeting people, which I think is key.
Sure.
I mean, that's the way to get work.
Right.
So having a teacher, also going, I think I went out a couple of times to the only nightclubs I knew that had live music. And I'd be underage, and I'd get in and just introduce myself. I remember business cards. Nobody has business cards anymore, right?
Right.
But I had bass player business cards and hyped myself up as being this, player that I wasn't. But
but you were talking to people like you were just going up to people cold. In a sense, like
I do remember that, going up to people and just introducing myself. I mean, at some point I do remember that, getting over that fear of like, I have to talk to this guy after the set.
Yeah.
I've got to go up and say, hey. So,
so would this be like on any gig, any show you went to, you'd make it a point to talk to the bass player and then other musicians in the band?
Yeah, I would make that a point. I would just, I do remember, giving my number, saying, hey, call me for anything.
Sure.
A big thing was always saying yes.
Yeah.
That was one big thing. So like, somebody would call, like particularly in those first years, somebody would call and say, hey, can you do this gig? And I would be scared. I mean, scared to death. This was at the point where I didn't understand music at all, and I would write every single note down on a piece of paper and play everything verbatim, so I guess what I'm saying is, I was just so hungry for it, and I don't know if I really have that anymore. Honestly, as you get older, you kind of lose it. But just so hungry for it that you would just say yes to whatever, and show up and crash and burn if you did or whatever. But just taking anything.
Sure.
I just wound up taking any gig, and through that, you meet so many people that you're going to work. You're going to. Sure. People are going to need you at some point, whether you're top bass player or like the very bottom, bottom dude, which of course happens to everybody.
So you're kind of saying that how you got started was just having an attitude like, I want to play.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to talk to anybody and say yes to anything that comes my way.
Yes to anything. If it was so bad for your schedule, if it was so beyond your ability, you just say yes. Just do it. And it's the worst thing. What's the worst that's going to happen? I've had so many gigs where it was just awful, but you live through it, and obviously nothing gets you better faster than crashing on a gig. You'll never do that again. It's just it's obviously really really embarrassing.
Well, what happens? So how did you overcome after you learned that you weren't maybe prepared for something? Like you took a gig that was a little out of your range. Yeah. And then and you didn't want to make those mistakes again. What were some of your processes and like how to prepare for the next gig? Yeah.
Well, I will say that, it was never preparedness that was an issue. Like I would sit around for hours and figure this stuff out. We all have our way to music. We all have this this process that we have to go to. And mine was just literally just spending just tons and tons of time transcribing. I didn't understand music, until much later, but, I could hear notes. I could write notes down and I, could find the notes sort of, I guess, from the piano background, note on paper, note on the keyboard, Like I didn't understand that stuff, So I was actually getting in there and figuring out everything that was happening. Note for note, everything that was happening. And eventually I actually look back and think, there were times where it was obviously quite lame to be, to be playing like that. But then looking back, just being so, I guess, analytical about it, I actually think it winds up helping, but it was a very slow, for me, this stuff is a very slow process. Lots of people do this faster. They can figure their way faster, but for me, it really took a long time, I feel like.
So when did you begin to analyze music differently so that you can learn the songs faster or interact with the band? How was that transition like?
Yeah,
when
that's
you went
a good
from
question.
I'm just learning the song note for note. Now I need to get beyond that and interact with other players.
That's a really good question. That was also, it happened so gradually that, it's hard to say when it happened. But I will say, getting on gigs where maybe you don't know the music or people are kind of maybe calling tunes, that they wouldn't have given you on a set list ahead of time, and you're having to fake it. Eventually, you just start to recognize patterns in the music. And I guess if you're not reading, and you're really there kind of in the moment paying attention to what you should be doing, those patterns occur quicker, if that makes sense. It's like a friend of mine always told me, learning a tune at home is one thing, but like learning it on the gig, you learn it for life. Like for some reason, being on stage, when you're learning a tune, you'll never forget the tune. I don't know what it is about being on stage and playing a song, but you'll never forget it. So I guess those connections just kind of happened faster the more gigs I did that I couldn't be super prepared for, So, and then I also, I took, I went to North Texas for a little bit, but I also took some correspondence courses with this guy, Charlie Bonacos, who was a jazz pianist. And he had me working on a lot of circle of fifths stuff, and you start to realize most music is based on that. Obviously, right? I'm not saying anything profound there, but actually just playing in circle five. Saying that chords tend to be related by fifths and fourths. We had talked about this before. These trust chops that you develop. The more you play. Even if you don't realize it, you're kind of letting go and your muscles kind of take over,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And I guess you learn to trust that to the point that, 9 times out of 10, you might be right.
Right.
You know?
Right.
If that makes sense.
That rare occasion that you play a fill too early and it's, whoops.
Yeah, whoops.
But
You can
most of the
find,
time it's-
and you just trust. Pino Palladino talks. He's one of my favorite bass players. Talks about that in a lot. How this is a guy who's played with Eric Clapton and Erykah Badu and Simon Phillips and just all kinds of music. It's a guy like that. How does he retain all that information? It's not that he's retaining the information. It's just that in the moment, one chord has moved to another chord, and he can just. He can just play, It's not as if all that music is in his head at one time. So
it's kind of like how, for me being a drummer, I'm not thinking in chord changes and scale degrees and all that, but I'm thinking in form. Here's a verse, here's a chorus, and I started a process where I was learning 45 songs in a week, and so I would write down the structure first. And after a couple of songs, I realized that all these songs have almost the same format. They're like, here's an intro, and went, what's the song doing on a bigger scale, And then learning, it just goes verse, chorus, bridge, out.
Yeah. So seeing that big picture, that's really hard, I guess as a kid, we and me were looking at music very short-sighted, note to note to note. It's like, you're thinking to yourself, where are they getting all these notes?
Yeah,
how are they playing all this stuff? Where's this coming from? And then you learn very quickly that, it's actually only 4 or 5 chords or whatever. And it becomes, obviously much easier the more you understand. But
let's kind of get back to another topic as far as the gig side of it. So we're in our early years just trying to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
And then now you're becoming an adult. So how do you transition from, all right, this is fun, I'm saying yes to every gig I can.
Yeah.
So now this is serious. I want to make money and support myself, playing music.
Yeah.
So what's that transition like? Do you remember if there was a transition at all, or?
Well, I mean, I had other jobs for a while, like supplementing. There was a point where I just said, I'm just going to play music. And I think it was just because I was failing at every other job I had.
Sure.
I walked out of a waiting job, loading trucks at a shipping company or whatever, I just hated everything else. And a buddy of mine kind of came up to me and just said, look, if you can imagine yourself doing anything else besides music, do it. Because music is it's very hard to make it. It's a hard life on your family. You're never available. I mean, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But I guess I was just failing at everything else that I just had to do this. It was like I didn't have a choice. So I guess it just it just eventually developed. I mean, if you need it enough, if you're hungry, if you need some bread, you'll do it. I mean, and there's so many gigs. I mean, here we're in Dallas. I mean, this is gig city. I mean, there's so many gigs here. So, there in the beginning playing a lot of country music, got involved with a country band, and that's some really great music to get started with. It really teaches you a lot about taste and time.
Sure.
So playing a lot of country music, and then, there's a lot of cover bands and wedding bands, and there's just tons of work.
Right.
And, so if you want to get money, you don't have to be the best bass player in the world. You don't have to be a super great musician. Mm-hmm. It's easy to get some work and get better. And I guess I just always looked at it that way. Like,
okay,
I'm going to take this, and not only am I going to get some money, but I'm going to get some experience, and I'm going to get better. And that's why you just always say yes.
Sure.
Because it's not just that you're getting $100 or whatever. you're getting some experience, and you're gonna sound better and better and better. And that's the whole idea.
So what? Now you're at a point maybe that we'll talk a little bit about where you're at now, like with your music career. Like, how do you feel? I mean, you're not working at other jobs anymore,
right?
You're just playing music.
Playing music.
What does that look like? Tell the listeners, like, okay, this is what I got going on today. This is what I did this week.
Oh yeah,
this is what a normal.
Yeah. So,
week looks like.
So this week there's like a wedding variety band called High Definition that a good friend of mine, Ross Redman, is a great singer and piano player, and Mike Spey on drums, really great musicians. I guess they're guys out of town, so, I'm available. So I took, I guess, 3 dates with them this week. A bat mitzvah, a club date, and like a wedding party.
Okay. So did they call you just because they knew your name, or?
Yeah, me and Ross had played together before. Me and Mike had played together before. So, obviously having this rapport, I guess somewhat of a reputation, but I would say it's more just, I'm cool with these guys, right? Yeah. So I did that. I had a studio session yesterday with this, fortunately, I don't think I'm going to pronounce his name right. He's an Indian fellow. But I played a track with him, gave him, gave him about an hour, about 4 or 5 takes.
Okay. That's in the studio.
That was actually at his place. He had a Pro Tools set up at his place, and so bass direct to board. Just gave him, asked what he wanted, and tried to give him 5 different versions of this tune. I've got church gigs this week. Had a Monday jazz gig at the Balcony Club, kind of not straight ahead, I guess more of a fusion kind of rock jazz thing. I think that's it for this week. A lot of it, it's sort of more creative stuff early in the week, like Monday through Wednesday, maybe a church thing there in the middle, and then some wedding club type variety gig. Towards the evening, because Friday and Saturday, those wedding gigs pay pretty well. Yeah. It's like you're going to take that Saturday night gig, and then Sunday is full of church, and just great. Grateful to be playing all the all those type of gigs, and each week's different, but it tends to be like that. A little bit more creative early in the week. And a little bit, maybe perhaps more commercial later in the week.
More popular music
later in the week, just when people go out to bars, etc.
Yeah, I noticed like the scene in Dallas seems like, on the weekend, the majority of people, they want to just go and hear good music, but they want to hear songs that they heard. Yeah. And they just want to get out and dance and have fun. And, I was at Sambuca 360, and there was a Devo cover band.
Yeah.
They just played all 80s type tunes, and it was great, and that's it. The whole crowd was loving it. And it's because that's what people want on the weekend, Yeah. Now, I remember we were doing on Thursday nights.
Yeah, exactly.
A little earlier, not as many people are going out, but the people who did show up were like,
really?
This is great music, There was a lot more experimental and stuff.
Yeah.
So you mix it up. Now, did you choose to mix it up because you thought that was more opportunity? Or it just kind of happened that way?
Yeah, that's a good question. So initially, I was in a band, I guess committed to one of these variety groups, and that was appropriate for my 20s. I felt like it's I was still developing. I mean, we're all still developing, but if your 20s, that's big time. Lots of developing work there, and so I guess not only did I need to get better to get more gigs, I mean, I had to get better by being in this one band. And of course, this one band that would have I was just grateful to take it, to have it. So just doing that over and over. And that band in particular was great because it had a lot of rotating members.
Okay.
Lots of the great drummers, great horn sections, and it would be different guys because these guys would go on tour. Sure. And the head of the group was, a real music lover and a musician lover. Yeah. And was cool with that. So I was always playing with just some of the greatest, really some of the greatest musicians in this town with that group. And
what group was this?
This was that Mars Hill group, Dave Barnett's thing. And so that's where I got to meet, Sean McCurley and JT and Keith Anderson. And we've all become really great friends.
Right.
So at that point, after a few years of that, I just realized, okay, it can be stifling.
Because this is all not original music.
It's not, he's got some, it was one of those situations where, Dave gets called for everything. I mean, it's not just cover things. We used to do a Celebrate Recovery, a rehab meeting thing, and we would play at the beginning of that.
Okay.
And I wasn't in rehab. It's like, but like those type of things, just all kinds. Dave had a Christian praise and worship type CD out, and like we would go promote that. So that would be his original music, and then he would get called to back up Jay Leno at a J.C. Penney thing. So we would learn all these stingers, and we would. So it was actually a great gig, but it wasn't just the same show that we were learning over and over. I mean, we were always doing things, but eventually it became, I guess, a little stifling just because I wanted to be just available. That was my thing, is whatever came around, I wanted to be able to see what it was and take it if I wanted it. But more importantly, get out there and just keep my name fresh with people.
Sure.
Stay relevant. I feel like if you're in a band maybe for too long, you lose that. You're not as relevant. I mean, you're only playing with these people. You're probably playing the same licks in the same places. Yeah. It's like you gotta kind of stay fresh. So at some point, I just decided, I'm not gonna join a band like that again.
Gotcha.
And I'm, it's great because that band still calls me.
Yeah,
they still call me when they need me. I'm going to Orlando with them coming up here soon, and but then I get these other calls with other groups, and I get to play with more people, and then they'll call me for their creative gigs early in the week. So I'll get that, or some studio thing at another point. So I think it's actually been a good move. This leaving that and just kind of being more of a freelance,
kind of knowing when to leave a situation, right?
Knowing when to leave a situation, and to be honest with you, I probably should have left earlier.
Yeah,
I was probably a little too old to have left, or left too late. But still, it's fine. I just couldn't imagine being much, too far into my 30s and being in this band for that long. Can't imagine that.
So how would that kind of leaves a good transition to how does this affect your family life? Being a professional musician, gigging as many times as you do at different hours and stuff. How does that affect you?
Man, I mean, you're going to get a different answer from me every day on that one.
Sure.
So it's tough. It's really tough. I feel like I can't make anything. Any kind of family functions. For example, today I'm going to miss my wife's dad's birthday party, which I think I've missed for the last 7 years. Really? Yeah. And I missed my wife's sister's wedding, which obviously didn't go over well, and
Sure.
But lots of that stuff. It's a strain. It's really difficult. One big thing I struggle with.
Trying to find that balance?
Well, I guess. I mean, I love music, man. I love playing. I feel alive when I'm playing up there.
Yeah.
And I love, honestly love it more than almost anything. So it's like you just do it. Sure. And you just hope that you've got some support, and sometimes you don't.
Have you ever had to make that decision to drop a gig for a family function?
I should have, but I don't, man. I don't know. I'm sorry. I should be doing that, and I don't. And I don't know. I'm scared that by that one gig might be that gig. It's like that one might be the one. So it's like I keep taking them. Sure. I keep taking them, and I keep showing up, and I miss everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know what the balance is. I don't know what I should be doing, but this is just. It's just a choice, you make. It's not for everybody.
Right.
A lot of people really, particularly husbands and the way they treat their wives. Most wives won't allow this.
Yeah.
And so I'm lucky that she's supportive most of the time. So I'm lucky.
Now, there was something you said that you kind of feel like you have to take anything that comes, and there was a guy by the name of Tim Ferriss that said this, that you have to believe or trust in yourself, your ability to get another opportunity. and so he had to come to terms with, you know what, if I say no, then that's okay because someone's going to call me again. He had to, it took him a while to internalize that.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay if I say no because I believe in my ability to create opportunity.
Yeah, I need to learn from this guy because I don't believe in my ability, and I'm afraid of, I want to be called, I want to be, like I said, I want to be relevant, I want to be on these people's minds, I want to play, and I'm just not. I don't feel like I'm at that point yet where I can just, not take work,
right?
And but I wish, I respect that, but. I really do believe that, by playing this gig, you get this gig.
Sure.
And by doing this gig, you get this session. And you just don't know. You don't know who's listening to you that night.
Right.
So you show up, you do the very best you can, and maybe somebody in the audience is listening to you and hires you for a session later or something. So, and if you weren't on that gig.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe not.
Yeah. And, I know guys who, when on their days off, they're out. They're out, maybe not hustling, but they're out seeing live music.
Yeah.
And they've got their face in the crowd. And there's something to be said for that. And, even on my nights off, most of the time I like to stay home and do nothing.
Yeah.
But, because I'm just exhausted. But, I have a lot of respect for that too. Just guys who are constantly just
out
on the scene. Mm-hmm. And that there's something to be said for that. You've got to be on these people's minds.
Right.
Bass player. Who do you think of? You've got, 5 guys you got to think of, and you want to be on that list.
Sure.
You want to be on one of those 5 dudes that these guys are thinking about.
Like you were saying about being, out in it as a way to, for people to know your name.
Yeah.
What are some other ways, or what are some other tactics you've tried that maybe aren't going out and being on the scene? Uh-huh. Have you done any other things outside of that to promote your name? Have you done?
Sure.
Have you used any technologies or?
Yeah, all the social media. I haven't used it as much as I should, and I've really heard there's a lot of information out there how to really maximize social media.
Sure.
And you've been getting into this.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I haven't. But I'll post on Facebook, maybe put some tracks that I've done or something, which I think is promotion. Mm-hmm. Having people, sending people along to hear your music, whatever you've done, or letting people know where you're at, particularly for your best gigs, like let people know where you're playing. That kind of stuff is good, kind of developing that type of hype about yourself in a way, that you're busy and you're playing, like that kind of stuff. It's simple, but that's important. There's a lot of things that me and some friends will talk about where, like the social media stuff that doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys, for example, that will appear as if they're begging for work.
Really?
Yeah, on some of these social media sites, like here in this area. And how I don't think that's very conducive. Mm-hmm. It's like you want the perception in a way.
Yeah.
You want the perception that you're working and you're busier maybe than you are, particularly in that those earlier stages.
Sure.
And it sounds silly, but I suppose asking for work, it's not a bad thing. But
you don't want to seem needy at the
You don't
same
want to
time.
seem needy. Yeah, you see like there's this odd balance of keeping this perception with people that you want them to have of you.
Yeah.
But also being grounded enough to realize, hey, you're really not all that.
Yeah.
So that's actually a really tricky thing. We've talked about it. It's like, not seeming too needy or something.
Sure.
So that there's a bit of like trusting that your reputation and your job speaks for itself, and that people will call you.
But you also can't wait by the phone either.
You can't wait by the phone either. Yeah, there's definitely a very tricky balance there.
That completes our first episode of the Rips Music Podcast. Lots of great information from Peter Champagne. Peter talked about overcoming your fears and the power of failing. His motto is always say yes. You never know what opportunities will come, despite how challenging the gig may be. For more show notes and links, visit ripsmusic.com. subscribe to the show on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, as well as my YouTube channel. What things are holding you back from getting more gigs? How are you overcoming obstacles and challenges that come up in your career? Leave a comment or question below, and I'll include it in an upcoming episode. Thanks for listening.